guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be doing a wrap-up video, and these are all the books that I read since my last wrap-up video. And I actually was looking at my Goodreads and I didn't realize how many books I had read since my last wrap-up video, and I was like, oh my gosh, I need to film another one of these like soon, because I don't like it when these videos get too long, because I feel like they get just kind of drawn out or whatever. So I decided to just sit down really quick and film this for you guys. Okay, so the first book that I read since my last wrap-up video was the book I was reading during my last wrap-up video, and in that video I was talking about how I was reading like a really good book, and I was so excited to share it with you guys because I was like obsessed with it. And that is The Push by Ashley Audrain, I believe her name is. This book, you guys, was phenomenal. This is hands down one of the best books that I've read all year. I give this book a gold star, which if you guys don't know, I have, my 1 through 5 rating system, but then in my reading journal that I keep, I always give like those books that are like over 5 stars, that are like books that are going to stay with me for a really long time. I give those books gold stars. I usually only give a couple books a year gold stars, and this book definitely got a gold star for me. It was phenomenal. Like, I can't explain how amazing this book was. Like, do you ever read a book and you're like, this author is genius? Like, the way that they're able to put a story together in a way that is so layered, and the amount of stuff she was able to put in this book to make everything like work together. Without giving too much of it away, it is about this mother who meets her boyfriend in college, and then they end up getting married, and she always kind of wants to have kids, and they finally decide to have kids, right? Like, it's kind of like on that regular path. But once she has her first child, she for some reason can't connect with the child like she thought she was going to, and it really surprises her because that really strong motherly connection that she felt like she was supposed to have like does not happen, but it happens with her husband. And she's so frustrated, and she's dealing with like postpartum depression and all sorts of other things, and she can't figure out why this connection cannot be made with this child. And she starts to notice like really interesting things between like the bond between her and her first child, which her name is Violet, by the way, the child. And she starts to see things within her child that kind of concerns her a little bit, but she doesn't know if it's like all in her own head or if she's actually seeing things, or maybe she just starts really questioning herself, and she starts to really question like who she is as a mother. And you are reading the book in a way where you're questioning the mother, like she's a very unreliable narrator in a way. And that's basically as far as I want to go into this book. But that's kind of like how it starts, but then like it gets weirder. But the thing that's so great about this book, like I'm not kidding you when I tell you I could talk about this book for hours. Like, this would be such a good book club read. But this talks about like intergenerational trauma, mother-daughter relationships. It talks about postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety. It talks about, motherly instincts. It talks about so many really interesting topics. Like, I'm going to tell you, if you're going to read any of my reviews for any book, go read the one on Goodreads for this one that I wrote, because I feel like I said what I needed to say really well in that review, but it is phenomenal. And I think the other reason why this book is so good is it's so relatable, but it's also like weirdly realistic, and it's like a topic that isn't talked about very much. It's a topic that like this author just decided to dive into and like go for it full force, like not caring about people's judgment, I feel like, which was really cool. And I feel like when you read this, especially as a mother, there's like these little tiny slivers in this novel where you're like, oh my gosh, that's so relatable, or oh my gosh, like I remember thinking that or feeling that. And I remember reading this book and just being like, finally a mother that was willing to write a book with complete and utter honesty while also making it like dark and creepy and like a thriller, which added to it, I don't know. But please know, major trigger warnings. I actually listed the trigger warnings in the review, so if you are a sensitive reader, definitely go check out the trigger warnings that I listed, because there are many in this book. Like, I can't say enough good things about it. It's that type of book. So the next book that I read was The Silent Waters by Brittany C. Cherry. So I actually read this book because I was on TikTok, and this TikTok came up, and it was this girl saying like the absolute best romance novel she ever read was this book. And I was like, really? And whenever somebody says like they've read so many romance novels, but this is like the best one they've ever read, or they read tons of thrillers, but this is the best one they've ever read, that always makes me want to pick the book up, because it makes me so curious. Like, you've read that many romances and this one's the best? Like, why? So I was really curious, and I got this on my Kindle, and this is, I feel like, right between YA and NA, like new adult. Like it's right in the middle. Like I wouldn't say it's completely YA and it's not completely new adult either. It kind of is like a full story, a full life story type of book. So it starts out YA, but it kind of ends when they're adults. So I don't know. But this book is about a girl who is friends with this boy and they're really, really young, and she just has like this huge crush on this boy. It's like her brother's friend. And she like wants to marry him, and they're like 8 years old, so it's really innocent. And then one day something really traumatic happens to this girl, and she's like our main character. And when this traumatic event happens to her, she ends up becoming mute. And so she cannot speak anymore because she's so traumatized. And this book is basically following her and kind of how this boy that she knew from a very young age, how he kind of dealt with her mutism and how he became like really good friends with her. And throughout the years, like he kind of just helped her through her life and didn't judge her for being mute or anything like that. And it's kind of like their story. And it's a romance, so you obviously kind of know where it's going to go. But one thing I can say about this book is it's so cute and it's so endearing. Like this book is so heartwarming and cute. Like if you're looking for a romance novel that's just adorable and cute, this is definitely the one for you, because it's the kind that start from like childhood and then you can see the whole progress up into adulthood, and it's sweet. And the main love interest is a very sweet guy, and I love that it dealt with a disability. Like I've never read a book with somebody that is mute, so I thought that was really cool and different and unique. So it kind of gave like a different, you know, plot to the story, which I liked, because I kind of feel like romances can feel a little bit similar sometimes, so this kind of definitely threw in something that wasn't normal. I would definitely recommend this if you guys like really sweet and endearing romances. I wouldn't say this is like super spicy or anything. I think it has like a little bit in it, like very little, but it's not like overly spicy, but it does have this sweet element to it that I think some of you guys might really enjoy, because sometimes I feel like I really enjoy the romantic, sweet, endearing elements to romances sometimes, and I'm really craving that element more than I'm craving like the spicy element. So I think it kind of depends on what mood I'm in. I do like a little bit of both, but I think sometimes it kind of depends on my mood. So if you're looking for something that's like endearing, then I would definitely recommend this. I do think it's definitely worth the read. I gave this 4 stars. So the next book I read was a book that took me so long to read. I think it took me 2 years to read this book, and it's been on my reading list on Goodreads for literally 2 years. This is The Moral Animal: Why We Are the Way We Are, the new science of evolutionary psychology. So this is like a major nonfiction niche book that's like very focused onto my interests. So this is about evolutionary psychology, and if you guys don't know much about like that area of study, it's a pretty new area of study, so there's still a lot to this area of study that isn't known. There's a lot of like theories that are still kind of being developed and stuff like that, and this book was really good at kind of making that known. Like they theorize, like it's not fully known yet, but this book is so fascinating. Like I've always been so interested in evolution and why us as humans act the way that we act and why we do the things that we do in relationships and in romance and all of that kind of thing, or just why we do the things we do. Like it's something that me and Travis have always gotten in really deep discussions about, and I really wanted to learn like the actual truth about it and what scientists have learned about us as humans and why we do the things we do, basically. And this is a really fascinating book. I will say that it's very dense. I listened to this on audio, and it's why it took me 2 years to read, because this isn't a book where you just like turn it on and you just listen and like go into la la land. Like you're using your brain while you're listening to this, so I feel like it's one of those books that, you know, you want to give yourself some time to read it and kind of turn it on when you want to learn something new, if that makes sense. I would say that I might want to read something else first, and I'm not sure what that book would be because I haven't read any other evolutionary psychology books, but I kind of feel like maybe like an introduction would have been a good place to start, and then jumping into this book after. Because like I said, this is an extremely dense read. Like it dives into family relationships and romantic relationships, heterosexual relationships, like homosexual relationships, and, you know, monogamy and all of that kind of stuff, and why we do it and like how we have evolved. And I just think it's so interesting. Like I love like factual answers like this, and I definitely want to dive into more books about evolutionary psychology. So if anybody has any recommendations, let me know. I don't know, it's a really interesting book, so if you want to learn something new, pick this up. So the next book is one I finally have physically, and that is The Bone Houses. So I got this book online, and I've always really loved this cover. I've always thought this cover was absolutely stunning, and it's part of the reason why I picked this up is because the cover, and it's always just really intrigued me. And you guys know you do it too. If you like a cover, you want to buy it. And this book is actually, it's not what I was expecting. It's about zombies. Of course they don't call them zombies, they call them like something else. I can't remember what, but it's about a girl who is like a grave digger, and she meets this guy who travels from a kingdom, and they're basically trying to figure out what his past is, because he doesn't know what his past is. He was adopted. He was basically found, he was an orphan, and he doesn't know his, background, his like where he came from. So they're trying to figure that out. She's curious about her father and what happened to her father, and she's trying to figure out how to like stop the zombies, because all these zombies are coming and attacking their town, and she feels like it's her job, to figure out where they're coming from and how to stop it. And this book actually, okay, so if you guys watched my Empire of the Vampire review, I talked about a book that did something similar to Empire of the Vampire, where it's like traveling and then fighting off the zombies, and then traveling some more, and then fighting off the zombies, and then traveling some more, and then fighting off the zombies, and how it gets a little bit repetitive after a while. This is the book I was talking about. So there is a lot of travel in this book, and like I said, it gets a little bit repetitive with the zombie fighting. So with her, she has an axe, and she always like fights these zombies off with an axe. But I feel like after watching these zombie fights or reading these zombie fights with this axe like over and over again, I'm like, okay, I already know like what's gonna happen. She's gonna kill him with the axe, and then she's gonna move on. And it just felt like it got a little bit repetitive after a while at points. But I didn't hate this book. So one interesting thing about this book was the end, and I was really happy with how the ending happened and like what happened at the end, and it was really worth reading some of the slower traveling parts that I'm personally not a fan of. It was definitely worth it because I think the end really wrapped everything up really well, and I like where it went. I like what happened in it, and it was just an overall good story, like a good, quick, easy fantasy story to read. I would definitely recommend this. I gave it 3 stars, I think, and the only reason I gave it 3 stars was because of the traveling, fighting element that I'm not a huge fan of personally. But if there was a little bit more going on in there, I definitely would have given this book 4 stars. So I would definitely recommend this if you haven't read a zombie book before, because this was my first zombie book other than like Illuminae. If you haven't read one before, this is a great place to start, because I actually really liked the characters, and I liked the ending, like I said, and I liked kind of just the whole world. It was like this little village, like up in the mountains, and it just kind of has that vibe, you know what I mean? So this is also a really good like October fall read as well. So if you guys want to read this around like Halloween, I feel like this would be a really good book for, this time of year. So the next book that I read was this graphic novel. This is called Heartbeat by Maria Lovett. So this is an adult graphic novel, and it is kind of like about vampires. And it's about like this kind of outcast girl who goes to like this boarding school, and she kind of starts falling in love with this bad boy, and she knows he's not a good person. Like, he's not a good person, but she falls in love with him because of that reason, because she feels like an outcast, and she's picked on a lot, people are mean to her a lot, and I feel like she kind of falls in love with this bad boy on purpose just because he is not nice, and it's kind of like this weird comforting thing to her. And he ends up turning into a vampire, or he is a vampire, and her friends kind of start to warn her about him, and I wasn't really sure exactly like if I was gonna like this book. I got it at a graphic novel comic book store in our town, and I bought it, and I went on Goodreads, and the reviews actually weren't that good on it, and I was like, am I gonna like this? I don't know. But I actually gave this 4 stars. And I feel like it was kind of a high 4. I was actually really pleasantly surprised with this, and I was surprised that it had such low ratings. This is definitely like a smutty graphic novel, and I actually haven't read a smutty graphic novel before with like actual sex scenes in it. And so that was kind of different and new for me, but I feel like this was good and I liked it. And I am excited to read the next one and the next one and the next one. I have to get my hands on them, but if you guys like vampires, and if you guys like kind of darker reads, and you're an adult, because this, like I said, is more of an adult graphic novel, I would recommend this if you're into vampires, because I personally really liked it. The way she wrote it is really interesting because I feel like she's able to tell a really complex story with very little words, which I think takes a lot of skill. I think it's actually really good and underrated for sure, especially if you're into graphic novels. So I'll let you guys know kind of what I think of future ones, but I think that this might be a graphic novel series that I get really, really into. I just have to figure out where to get the other ones. I'm gonna check a comic book store, see if he wants to order them for me. So the next book that I read is City of Thorns, The Demon Queen Trials, #1 by C.N. Crawford. So I actually started reading this because my sister-in-law was reading it, and I read the synopsis and I was like, that sounds kind of cool. And so I was like, I'm just gonna read it with her so we can read it like at the same time and then talk about it or whatever. And I actually really liked this, but I had a subscriber read this and she gave it 2 stars and I gave it 4 stars. Now I think that this book is another one of those books where it's kind of like a taste thing. I'm a person that reads fantasy but doesn't like a lot of like world building. Like I don't need a lot of world building to enjoy a story. In fact, too much world building for me can get like really boring. That's just how I am as a person. Like I have a short attention span, I've said this a lot, and so world building isn't a super, super strong necessity for me. And this book definitely lacks on world building, but it's high romance. So if you're really into like the romance and the slow burn and all that kind of thing, like this definitely has that element to it. So this book is an incubus succubus book, which I've never read a book with those types of characters in it. And so it was really, really new to me and I didn't really know what to expect. I actually had to look up what a succubus was exactly because I actually didn't really know. I had like a small idea, but I didn't know fully what they were. And so that was a really new thing for me. I've never read that before. And this is about a girl who's like going to college and there's like this little like, I don't know, like a kingdom next to the regular like human city. There's like a kingdom of demons. It's like a demon city. And the humans aren't allowed in this demon city unless you're going to the school, like the college in the demon city. And if you are, then you're allowed to go into the demon city. Well, her friend is going to that college. And she really wants to go into the demon city because her mother was murdered by a demon and she wants to figure out who murdered her mother to get revenge. And she wants to go to the college, but it's way too expensive, so she has to like go through her friend, and then she ends up meeting like this high demon lord guy, and they kind of have like this little thing, like he's trying to find revenge on someone and she's trying to find revenge, so they kind of like start working together, and she has to like pretend that she is this really evil succubus that she is like a doppelganger of basically, and he wants her to pretend to be her, and then he has to kind of teach her how to do that. And she's like really awkward, so she doesn't really know how to do it, but she has to act like it. And because she's acting like a succubus, it like, you know, kind of turns him on a little bit, and then it kind of turns her on a little bit, and you know what happens after that. So it's a good book. Like I personally was entertained, like the whole time I was reading it. I was into the story. I enjoyed my time reading it. It's not like this amazing like fantasy novel that's gonna like, you know, make history or anything, but if you're looking for something that's just like spicy and has like some romance in it, like lacks a little world building, you might enjoy this because it's like just your basic like urban fantasy for like adult women who tend to like YA, but it has spice in it. So that's the kind of book this is, but I personally liked it and I'm totally gonna read the second one because I thought it was like entertaining and I'm really curious to see like where the book goes. So the next book is The Dyslexic Advantage, Unlocking the Hidden Potential of the Dyslexic Brain. So I am obsessed with this book. So as you guys know, I've told you guys this in the past, Elena's dyslexic, and I read this book and people had told me to read this book for a really long time and I was like, I don't want to read this book. Like it's probably just going to be a bunch of people telling me what to do to help my daughter read better and like all these tips, and I'm like, I don't like want a book like that. And so I never read this because that's what I thought it was going to be. But this book is so flippin' good. I'm telling you guys, if you have a child that has any difficulty learning how to read or spell or anything, or even has ADHD, like seriously read this book because it is mind-blowing. There's so many things in this book that I'm like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, that's crazy. Like that is so cool. Like I read this book and I finished reading this book with a completely different understanding and mindset on dyslexia, and I never was one of those people to be like dyslexia is a superpower, because I'm like, it's not. Like it makes life difficult. But after reading this book, I was able to look at dyslexia in such a different way because it really does show the strengths of somebody with this type of mind, and it is such a good read, you guys. I am serious. Like there's so many things I could say about it. Like I was talking to my mom about this book and I was like telling her every single thing I was learning, and I was like, and this, and this, and did you know this, and did you know this? And she even wanted to read it after all of the things that I was telling her. Like I could like make an entire review just on this book just to tell you all of the amazing things that I learned in it because it's that good. One thing that I learned, and I'm going to try to word this as best as I can. I can't remember the exact wording that they used in the book, but I'm going to try to explain it as best as I can. So what they were saying is in our cortex, there are like processing columns. So like our brain processors or our neurons or something are in these columns. And people that have like normal brains, their columns are pretty evenly spaced. So when they're processing information, they kind of cross and they jump from column to column and process information like that. Well, dyslexic brains, their processing columns are much farther apart. So when they're processing information, sometimes the processing can go into different areas of the brain because the columns are so far apart that the processing goes to like this part of the brain and this part of the brain. So when they're processing problems and they're problem solving and stuff, their processing neurons are going to different areas of the brain, so it's helping them like think outside of the box. And people sometimes even hire dyslexic people on purpose because they are better problem solvers than neurotypical people because they think outside of the box in ways that like you would never think because they're thinking of things that don't even relate to the problem a lot of times. And I thought that that was so fascinating. And then they also said that autistic people, their brain columns, like their processing columns, are really, really close together. And it's why autistic people tend to be so hyper-focused and like zoning into one idea, zoning into one thing and being able to like pick apart every single thing for that particular thing. And then dyslexics are complete opposite to where they can go here and here and here and here and here and here. And then neurotypical people are just kind of like here. And it's just so fascinating. And that's just one thing, guys. One thing. This entire book is full of interesting facts like that, where you look at dyslexic people with a completely different like outlook and you're like, wow, like you are so freaking special. Like you have like these special talents that other people don't have, and like the way that you're able to like problem solve and see the world, and like it's just fascinating. Like I want everyone to read this book. I think every teacher should be required to read this book. Every single teacher. It makes me question the entire school system. Like I have thought about this book 100 times since I've read it. Like I'm so passionate about this subject. Like it's not even funny. So the next book I read was Happily Ever After and Everything in Between. I read this at the library actually. I had to kill some time that day, and so I went to the library and I just took this off the shelf and read the entire thing. This is like a little graphic novel, and it's the same person that wrote Quiet Girl in a Noisy World. I read that one. It was really good. She also wrote this graphic novel called Book Love. And then this one is Happily Ever After and Everything in Between. So this is basically like a graphic novel about marriage and like what a relationship looks like and what marriage looks like, and like all the funny little things that happen in marriage that are just funny to make fun of. And if you're in a marriage or you're getting married or whatever, like it's just a cute book. Like all of her books are so like niche and specific, but really, really good. She has the cutest little drawings, and I just highly recommend her books. And just do what I did, like go to the library, get the graphic novel off the shelf, and just sit down in like a comfy chair and read it. Like I read this in one sitting, and it's totally worth it. Like they're so cute. I actually own the introvert one, and I have it by my toilet, and sometimes I just read that over and over again because they're just really, really cute stories. I think I gave this 4 stars, but like I easily could have given it 5. Like I don't even know why I didn't give it 5, just because it's cute. So the last book is obviously Empire of the Vampire. I did a whole video on this, so I'm not going to talk too much about it. I'll link the video to the review down below so you guys can watch that if you want. It goes into quite a bit of detail. But I gave this book 3 stars. As you guys know, I'm not like obsessed with it like some people are, but I don't hate it by any means. Like this was a good story, and I really enjoyed the story, but I wouldn't say it's like my favorite book of all time, if that makes sense. But it's definitely worth the read if you like vampires and stuff like that. Like I did really like the story. I did like the characters and like learning about the characters and seeing where the story went. Mostly the reason I gave it 3 stars was just because there were some major lull moments for me. There's a ton of world building in this. I felt like there were certain parts that dragged for me a little bit, and I can't do books that have really, really draggy parts. Like it's just really hard for me to get through, but it's still a good story. Like I still give it 3 stars, and I would definitely give it like a high 3. It's probably more like 3.5. So it's not bad, but it's not like fan-freaking-tastic either. But I know a lot of people think it's like one of the best books they've read in a very, very, very long time. So don't just take my word for it, because I know that a ton of people are obsessed with this, so like my opinion is just one opinion, and it's definitely like the unpopular one. So definitely pick this up if you've been wanting to pick it up, but just know if you kind of have similar tastes to me, then this may be one to pass on. But watch that Empire of the Vampire review and you can make a better judgment for yourself. But yeah, 3 stars. So that is it, you guys, for this video. Sorry I went on little tangents. Like, sometimes I get so passionate with like the things that I learn in books, like I just can't help myself and I just have to like say them out loud because I just find them so fascinating. But I'm sure you guys don't mind. Us bookworms like to learn new things occasionally. But anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know in the comments below what your favorite book is that you've read recently. If there's any of these books that you're gonna pick up and read, I'd be really curious to see like what you guys plan to read. I definitely recommend The Push. That's probably my favorite book that I read since my last wrap up. It was just so freaking phenomenal. And then also The Dyslexic Advantage, for those of you who feel like it might be good for you. Just don't put it off like I did. Like, I put it off for so long because I was like, I don't want to read it. And then I read it finally and I'm like, this book changed my life. So definitely pick those 2 up. Love them so much. And I think that's it, you guys. So I will see you in my next video and I hope you have a fabulous day. Bye.